Okay, so I am welcoming Annie to the podcast. I need you to say your last name. I should have asked you before. Please pronounce it for me.
Vander, Werff.
Oh, so just like it's spelled. It's not
Exactly.
even hard.
Nope.
People make it hard though, don't they?
Sometimes we've been in all areas of the alphabet with that name.
I have both of my last names. So I go by Eris professionally, but my husband's last name is Van Kerkhove, and neither of us have. His last name is actually pronounced like it's spelled, but there's so many vowels that people don't know which direction.
Right.
And they always put F's in there, and I'm like, no, there's no F.
Right.
Yeah, so it's fine. Okay, so I'm going to introduce Annie really quick. She owns GTA Consulting LLC. Tell me, what's your business? What do you do?
Well, I help people solve a problem to make a difference. So a lot of times people are stuck and they have this brilliant idea that could really impact change in the world. And I want to pull that out and help them put a structure around it and do it.
Very cool. So you work with business owners particularly, or is there a range?
Yeah, I love to work with female executives and people who are aspiring to be, but I also work with people who are just ready to get unstuck and move forward. So, and then I also, because I have 20 years of experience in the nonprofit sector, I like to work with businesses and in particular NGOs who are looking to put some strategy and intention behind what they're doing.
Yeah, that's so cool. I know, especially people that are starting a nonprofit, which is so, strong on people's hearts, that it can be so hard to get that funding and money and, even just communicate to other people what it is you want your nonprofit to accomplish.
Exactly.
It's hard. I don't know what the statistics are on nonprofits, what making it or not making it, but I bet it's right up there with business ownership. It's got to be.
It is. And I think a lot of people think, well, maybe I'll just start a nonprofit instead of going to business, right? You think it's a lot easier, but it's a trade-off in a lot of ways. And quite honestly, I think it's not easier to go into nonprofit work. So I love talking to people about this because of that reason.
Yeah, we considered nonprofit with you conferences. It was something I sat down and talked to a lawyer about because it's definitely a passion project. It's, it's never been anything that I've wanted to make a ton of money at. But at the end of the day, it was decided that the living in the politics of nonprofit was not worth it for me and not something I wanted to play in. It was just not a playground I was going to do well on.
It's true. And so you have to decide a lot of things, but I just love talking to people about that. And I think there's so much power in knowing that you can be that entrepreneur. That word is kind of scary, I think, to some people, but I like to use impactpreneur actually.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
I might see that on a U conference as something.
Yeah.
That's very cool. Yeah, because a lot of entrepreneurs want to make an impact and trying to figure out how to do it, though they may end up down that road. And that is, well, I would say most women entrepreneurs are simultaneously looking for a paycheck and an impact to the world.
So. Right. And so that's why I love working with the servant-hearted entrepreneur and the servant-hearted leader. It wasn't long ago that I realized that's who I am. And so that's how I even got started down this road, is just saying, okay, I am a servant-hearted leader. And what does that mean? And what does that look like?
So what did you do? What did you work in before you owned your consulting business?
So I worked in local and international nonprofits. So I was executive director, fundraising director, marketing, I wore all the hats and I traveled the world, which has been really amazing. And so I've brought together the power of getting unstuck, right? Because I think a lot of times we burn ourselves out in the nonprofit world because we're like, I'm going to save the world. And in fact, it turns out we can't save the world when we run ourselves down into the ground and don't regenerate ourselves. So
yeah, and I think sometimes when you have big ideas and you wear all the hats, you can get really bogged down in details that don't matter, or or get really stuck with that. So it sounds like that's what you're kind of helping
Yeah.
people do.
Yeah.
Tell me, like, and I usually talk about how we met. You and I have never met. This is legitimately our
No,
first conversation.
it is. It is our first conversation.
So people kind of have an idea. So how did you find conferences? How did this land on your radar to want to be a speaker?
You know what? I live in Iowa, also not too far from you, I believe. And so I have a few friends who have introduced me to the U conference. And about 2 years ago, I was going to submit a proposal to present, and then I just didn't. There was a lot of things around that, but then this year I had a few friends say you should reach out and apply to speak here. So anyway, I did it, and here we are.
That's cool. What is life like for you outside of, you call yourself a mom-preneur as well.
Yep.
So tell me about life outside of being a
Yeah.
business owner.
Right. So I have two teenagers, junior and freshman as we speak. And so, yeah,
I do.
it gets to be a lot. And so I love them dearly, and they
Of course.
challenge me and push me. And, but having the freedom to, one, work from home, which is awesome, and set my own schedule, but then also to know that right here from my home, I can impact change in the world is just so rewarding. And so then my kids get to see me investing in me and doing that and making change around the globe. So
Yeah, that's
it's been
cool.
really fun. Yeah.
Are your kids girls, boys?
My daughter is the older one, and then my son is younger.
So you have both experiences and all of the testosterone and the estrogen and everything in between.
It's all here, girl.
When anyone tells me that like one gender is easier than another, I'm like, these are lies.
Right.
All kids are hard.
They are, and in their own way, right? They're all trying to figure out, what is my passion? Where do I fit in this world? And everybody comes to that understanding in their own way. So
Yeah, it's hard as a mom too, like when you have such and I'm a stepmom and an aunt, and I take that role very seriously. And it's so interesting, I think, when you're impacting kids, because you are with your actions every day, everything you do, everything you say, they're
Yep.
sponges. They take things personally, all of it. The
Yeah.
drama. Anyway, not that I know, but you want and you hope and you dream and you see potential so much, but at the same time they're their own human beings
Right.
with underdeveloped brains
Right.
and adult bodies.
Exactly. They're just trying to navigate like we all are.
Yeah. It's really interesting when you have my oldest niece is 16. I'm very close with all my nieces and nephews. I spend a lot of time with them in very personal ways. And you just the teenage years are real neat.
Yeah.
I thought the early elementary schools were neat, and now I'm learning.
I mean, I liked 18 months. That was fun.
So fun.
But you know what? I think, Kendra, a couple of things. One, I love that they're getting older and they're more independent, right? And they can do things on their own. But at the same time, we can have adult conversations.
Yeah.
Say adult, but life conversations. And two, I went. My bucket list for miles are all the different places that I want to take them. And so, all the life experiences that we get to have together. We had a 40-hour round trip car ride this summer, and so you learn a lot about each other when you're in the car for so long together. And when you travel together, we just recently went to Haiti, and just what they got to learn about themselves through the eyes of a different culture and just being exposed. And so while I love helping people discover their purpose, right? And that's part of how I do it, is through escapes, not only just through coaching and consulting, but taking people and immersing in a new and different culture. I want to do that for my kids too, because I know that's how I found out who I was. by learning through other people. And so they're doing the same.
Oh my gosh. Tell me about your trip to Haiti. Tell me a little
Oh,
bit about that. I bet
girl,
you could
I
talk
don't
for
know if we have
years.
enough time. Yeah,
Right.
I could. So I was very blessed, and I don't feel like any of my life journey has been a mistake. I feel like God has me on a path to, where He needs me to go, and so that's actually what GTA stands for, is God through Annie. And so I'm just really taking steps with His guidance, and so, but. About 6 years ago, I quit my really comfy, nice paycheck job. Even though it was a nonprofit, it was a really large nonprofit. So I was doing all right. And then I went and was the first executive director for a nonprofit in Haiti. And
Oh my
so
gosh.
they were based out of Iowa. So it was such a blessing in so many ways. But I have learned more about myself in 6 years from my colleagues in Haiti than I have learned in a really long time. And so I think some people call it a Haiti high. Some people, people call it different things, but I have so much gratitude for my colleagues, my Haitian colleagues.
We will have to talk more about that in the future because I know we could talk forever. Haiti is one of those places I have always felt a funny calling to. I have no connection, none
Yeah.
whatsoever. I do know a Haitian person.
Oh, okay, good.
One, but that's not why. But when she told
Yeah.
me she was from Haiti, I didn't know she was from Haiti. She's grown
Yeah.
up in the United States. Her family was from there. And but she's full Haitian person. But when she told me that, I was like, ooh, tell me more. I don't know why. I just feel probably because so much has happened to them and they seemed like to be the most resilient people on the planet. Just really, I don't know. We'll have to talk more about it.
Yeah.
And I'd love your
Okay.
thoughts on something. So, I grew up, started my life to teenage parents, grew up, I don't want to say super poor because my parents worked really, really hard. And especially as I got older, things were not uncomfortably poor, but as a child, they
Sure.
were. And, up until, thank God, my parents got figured out by junior high. So I didn't have to go through junior high in poverty. I
Oh,
feel so
right.
bad when people do because my heart goes out to them so much. But my husband, by 180 degrees different. His parents were entrepreneurs when he was young and kind of got it figured out. I think his first car was a Mustang, and like he grew up very, I don't want to say very privileged because I don't want to put anyone down for that. But then watching us raise our kids, I said to my daughter one day, she's now 14, this is probably a year ago. I said, have you ever really wanted something like in your heart, wanted it so badly and then didn't get it? And it was just like a true, like I was curious. And they have 4 parents because their mom and dad are divorced, that all dote on them ridiculously. I mean, we're ridiculous.
Right.
And she said, no, I don't think so. And so I've had such a calling to, it's so hard. Like, how do you, give your kids the experience? If you want to give them more than you had, you don't want them to want for anything. You want them to love their lives and not have the stigmas of like which jeans they're wearing. And, they don't have the bucket rusted out car. Although I feel like they should all have a rusted out car.
Right. We should all drive that one time and
Once.
have it break down, right?
Yes, in the middle of a cornfield, or in
Mhm.
the middle of Amish country in November. That's when it happened to me. Uh,
Oh.
it's
Exactly.
not a lie. There's no phones.
What do we do? Walk to a stranger's house? We
I
are.
did. But exposing your kids to simultaneously to, that appreciate what you have tour of life, and then also not raising them to feel bad about what they have. That's hard, right?
It is really hard, and I'm struggling with that right now. And I had to draw the line at, I wanted my daughter to get a job in the worst way, and the world can know that because the world knows that. This is not a secret. I've been telling her for a long time, and I said, and if you don't have a job, I will stop paying for your gas in your car starting January 1. And so I've stopped paying for her gas now, and I'm proud of myself for holding true to that. But that's just a tiny little example of how I feel like a baby step towards what we're talking about here. But
yeah, it's hard because I think, so I have a sister that's, she'll be 30 this year, and I think I'll be 43 this year.
isn't that crazy?
43 or 4, I don't know. I'm approaching the
You're
mid
there.
40s. Real weird, real
Okay.
weird. And so we grew up very differently. Practically had 2 sets of parents, different. They're very different when I was a child versus when she was a child. And I think she got more helicopter parents. And when she went to college, she's not watching, I'm sure. And but if she is, sorry, I'm gonna throw you under the bus, Brooke. She didn't know how to do her laundry.
Oh.
And her boyfriend called me and was like, what the hell? Why does Brooke not know how to do laundry? And I'm like, well, because it was always done for her. I don't
Yeah,
know.
exactly.
And, so like, you don't want, you want to do for your kids, but you don't want to do so much. And at the same time, you want them to learn the lessons, but it's so hard when they learn the hard way. You're like,
I don't want to do this. Yeah, it is hard. You know
hard.
what though? When we went on our trip to Haiti, my kids came back saying, we stayed at they have beautiful resorts there, and we stayed at those beautiful resorts because it's also important to invest in the economy when we go there. And
Yeah.
so we
Safety
did
is
that
important as well.
absolutely. Yeah. And so but then we did go and visit some of the homes locally, and when we came back unprompted by me, right, the kids said, I said, what was your best takeaway that you could have? Actually, someone else asked them that, and they said, it's just really amazing to me to see people so happy with so little, right?
Oh,
I
wow.
mean, everybody has a cell phone. I would say 75-80% of people have cell phones in Haiti, but they don't have the same home lifestyle necessarily, accommodations or amenities or those kinds of things that we just take for granted every day. So that was a win in my book, because I'm struggling with the same thing you are. And so that trip really helped to say, okay, they're starting to see.
Yeah, that's so cool. And I love that. And I know a lot of women, when you talk about being an entrepreneur, a lot of women say, well, I can't walk away from the benefits of my corporate job.
Oh,
The insurance and the vacation and all the things, the security and all of that. And, or then when you think about, taking your kids on a trip to Haiti, I'm sure people are like, well, I could never do that. That sounds so expensive. Like, how do you make that work? But I don't know. I'm sure, well, I would love to know, what do you tell people when they ask that? Like, when they're like, how do you make all of this work? How do you make all that happen?
yeah. Well, I was just talking to a friend about this yesterday. A couple of things. I'm a risk taker, and so and I have a really strong faith, and so I know that if I'm supposed to take those risks or those steps, it will work out the way it's supposed to, right? There's always provision, but we have to take this step first. So the person who's thinking, oh, I could never leave my corporate job, I was there. I left my corporate job, changed my life. So if you never take the step, you will never know. So I would say life is short. We got to do it.
Yeah, that's true. And I feel like every big risk I've ever taken, it all works itself out eventually. Some things don't, but mostly it does all work itself out. Especially if you're super passionate about making it happen, like I think you almost will surprise yourself at what you'll make work, right? At least that's how I felt about it. So I am so excited for people to learn from you. I was looking up the name of your session, and I love it so very much. It's called Empower the Brave Girl in You. So tell people what, well, from 10,000 feet, what they're going to take away from your session.
Well, I just really feel like until we know what we really want, right? Until we actually figure out what we really want, if we really want to take that trip, or if we really want to solve this problem that's been on the back burner for so long, we have to start talking about it like we're going to do it. And so we need to identify our gifts first, right? And understand who we are and who we were created to be. What is our purpose? That is so powerful. And then understand, behind that, why do we want to take steps forward? What are we going to do in this world?
What do you get out of it, right?
Yeah. And so what's your why for doing what you do? If your why for going to your corporate job has something powerful behind it, then stay at it and do it. If it doesn't, maybe it's time to look for something else. And that's scary. And I just want to help people know that it is scary, but there's this opportunity to take steps that and get clarity around that so that you know that you're headed in the right direction.
Well, and you're like the idea of, helping people, our surrounding a business about helping people kind of explore what they want. How many people told you you were crazy or like you were never going to make money doing that?
You know what? That was just passing through my mind. My business coach, who I paid a lot of money to help me, told me, Annie, people are not going to pay you to do that. You have to have something else. And I said, they are going to come to me. And in fact, they are coming to me, which is so awesome. I love helping people just take a step outside of their comfort zone and see what's on the other side.
Well, the truth of the matter is most successful people, if not all truly successful people, have a coach in their pocket and in the background, helping them navigate through when the waters get muddy. That's just, it's not always the same coach forever. But it's, there's different steps along the way. Finding a coach that you connect with or that it lines up with your values is super important. Understanding that there's a lot of opportunity out there. I think that's one thing people get really scared of with coaching is they're like, well, if I sign up with this person, they're going to have to be my coach for the rest of my life. And what if I don't like them? It doesn't work like that.
In the last 2 years, I've had at least 4 coaches and 6 or 7 accountability partners. Like you just take one, it's your building block to the next, and some coaches, hang out in your life for a while, and so that's just my first coach. I think I invested $197. Like it was not even that expensive. Now, granted, I've invested quite a bit more since then, but I had to take the first step. And so
when you start really realizing what it feels like and what it looks like when you have someone that holds you accountable differently than a coworker or than a boss. And when you go into entrepreneurship or even into nonprofit or something, when you wear all the hats, it's just impossible to know all the things. And a lot of times, I do mentoring for small business owners, when they're first getting started with their business before they could ever think about hiring a coach. And, sometimes they just need that guidance of what's the first thing to let go of? What's the first hat to take off? And then it becomes like, all right, how do you stay accountable to these things? And for a lot of people, staying accountable to themselves and their calendar, impossible.
Right.
I mean, it's just, you will stay accountable to another person in a much different way.
Yep.
You stay accountable to yourself. Right. And that's
right. And it's hard because there's so much, I'll call it sabotage, right? There's so many things that come into your life to push you off course. And so one of my accountability partners said today, she said, I can feel sabotage coming on and I am in tune with myself. So I know not to fall prey to that. So
isn't that the recipe for burnout?
Right. Yeah. But the thing is, if we don't know ourselves and our tendencies and what that actually is, we're like, then we don't really know how to deal with it. It's when we can see it coming. That's when we're like, oh, I know what that is. I'm going to sidestep that and keep on going. Right.
Right. Well, and that's where self-development is so very important, to continuously develop your mindset. It's really like a muscle where you not only learn about yourself. I remember the moment that I got, all those personality tests out there.
Yep.
And so I remember the moment when I turned those results around from identifying what was wrong with me or why I am the way that I am to using those traits as okay, here's the things that I'm good at and I'm going to excel at. And here's the things I need to get help with because of how I am. And I think only self-development has gotten me through that, because otherwise we just assess ourselves.
I know. We're like, why am I crazy? Why is all these things happening in my mind? And I'm just going to go eat a bowl of chips now. Right?
Oh yeah. I have never figured out how to stop eating my feelings. That is a real conundrum for me. But I mean, I know why I'm doing it. And I'm glad it's, not turned into like a drug habit or something, which it certainly could have at this point. I'd rather have to deal with the treadmill than something else. But I just feel like it's so getting through that, understanding it's not wrong. Like there's nothing wrong with you. You just have some things to work out. It's okay.
Right. It is okay. And that's the thing that we have to know. Like, it's okay to be who we are. We just need to understand what makes us that way, right? What triggers us, what pushes us off course. But where is our zone of genius is really the question mark, right? And so when we put ourselves into our zone of genius, I actually just resigned from a contract recently. And I have really made some changes and really understood why I would just work these executive level positions, right? And be like, it's good, but right, I needed more because I wasn't working in my genius zone, right? And so when we get there, that's when we can call home and say we made it, right? And so that's the journey that I've been on recently, especially to really hone in on those pieces.
And I think we all know, even if we don't know it out loud, we all know in the back of our head what we're good at, what feeds our soul, what the things that we can't wait to dig into, and what motivates us in any work that we're doing. We all kind of know deep down what those things are, but it's hard to admit because that's when like people start feeling like they're egotistical.
It feels selfish, right? It feels selfish sometimes, and it feels like, who am I to come in and tell you what your strategy is? Well, my number one gift is strategy. So hell yeah, I'm going to come in and tell you what the strategy should be because I excel at that. Am I one to come in and take your plan and execute it? Absolutely not. I can help you with that, but I shouldn't be the one in charge of that because that would be working in my skill set, which is not my genius zone. So I feel like there's this understanding that we have, and so we're happiest, we're most on fire when we're working from those skills that are our highest gifts.
Yeah, that's so important. And you kind of evolve your way there, right? Could you imagine, this is what I think so much about this younger generation. I assume everybody is my age. So I don't know how old you are, but I just assume everyone is my age. This is the place that I live now. Do you?
Yeah. We're the same age based on what you said earlier. So
okay, perfect. So
but I do
know. So when you started in the workforce, at 18 or 22 or whenever people do it, we were still living in a hierarchy business place. So the boss was the boss. And when you got started, you work your way to where you want to go. And that means maybe, you have a broom in your hand or, you get busy. And I'm not saying you shouldn't do those things. We should all pitch in, right? But it was like, it didn't matter. If your boss told you to clean the baseboards with a toothbrush, you cleaned the baseboards with a toothbrush. But why? I'm an accountant because the boss said, that's how I entered the workforce. And I feel like millennials that came shortly after us were the first people that said, I want to be happy at work. I don't want to just punch the clock and 9 to 5 it. And you know what? I work a lot better between 10 and 7 than 8 and 5 or whatever.
Yeah.
And I remember when those things first started happening, like my parents and grandparents were like, oh, these lazy people.
Yep.
You don't need purpose. You need a paycheck.
Yes, exactly. That's the mentality, right?
Yeah. So I remember thinking like, just a struggle, but watching it progress and watching these next generations take over and really inspire me to say, no, I can have purpose and love my job and sweep the floor when it's my turn, right? And I saw another consultant that I know, because I have always also had this in my head that, well, maybe not everybody can work on purpose because somebody's got to, you know, work the fast food restaurants and the gas stations and stuff like that. And he had, as I literally was thinking that, isn't it funny how things just come in front of your eyeballs when you need them?
Yep.
He was showing, he works on culture for businesses, small, mid-sized businesses. He works on culture. And it was a meeting of the employees of a gas station and how they got together to talk about what their strengths are and how important their impact was on their customers and on people coming to their store. And I was like, it really is applicable everywhere.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't have to be just in big business.
Right. That's what I love. I love the strengths, no matter which one you choose, but one that I love for, especially for nonprofits, right? And for boards of directors, is everybody comes in with a different gift. And some people are always perceived, the wet blanket people who are like, they just kill the idea right then and there. I was part of this strategic planning one time where everybody did their gifts ahead of time, so we knew who was in which category. And so when we had discussion, right, about about what next project we were going to do, the dreamers went first, and we already explained to the wet blankets, okay, you're going to go last because you're going to have all the questions, but first we need to dream and we need to start having these conversations. The nurturers can come in, and who else needs to be included, right? And then you'll get your chance to ask the questions. But otherwise, if you don't understand the people at the table, your conversations may always get frustrating because you don't know what voices are talking when. And so when you name them and call them out, it's so much more fun to have a conversation, right?
Yeah. That is so brilliant. That is brilliant. Do you call them wet blankets? This is my question.
Well, some of them from the dreamer perspective are, but no,
I think they know.
We call them guardians, right? They're guardians of the timeline and the money and all of that.
Yeah, but we need them too. We need somebody
absolutely
for the budget and to say, maybe this is a future project, not a today project. Yeah, and I think we all kind of, just the leadership involvement, we kind of learn to accept everybody and all of their things, and it's not easy to do, though. It really, and sometimes it takes it outside perspective. That's where a consultant, a coach comes into mind. Like, hey, I understand why you're being responsive in this way, or why you're reacting this way to this situation, but from a different perspective, here's something that might be better. And I've learned that I'm like, as a leader, I'm the first one to say no to an idea. I'm like, nope, doesn't work, doesn't fit, nope. And I have learned to stop saying no right away and let it settle. And then some of the best ideas have come from that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it really breaks down so many barriers too, when a group of people know kind of who they are, because then they can almost joke about it, be like, okay, before you kibosh my idea, guardian, this is what I want to talk about here. And so then it just adds that element of freedom in your conversation, so that you don't feel like, well, they just hate me all the time, like all those little things that come into play. It's more professional. It's just more relaxed. It's just a lot more fun environment to work in. So.
Yeah. Tell me, how do you work with people? Do you do I don't know if the pandemic has changed the way you work with people, but do you work with people digitally, in person, a little bit of both?
I work with people all over the world. So digitally is the majority of the way that I work with people. I love connecting with people. So one-on-one is always fun, or, in groups, but I can do either way.
Very cool. I just wondered what that, but if you've always worked with people all over the world, this pandemic thing was nothing new, right?
No. And quite honestly, I've been working ever since I took the role as an executive director for the organization in Haiti. I've been working from home online. So for 6 years, I've been doing Zoom. I've been hosting meetings like this. So it really was not much of a transition for me, fortunately.
Were you glad when the pandemic happened and then all the technology got better?
Oh my gosh, I've been asking my fellow nonprofits locally, I'm like, can't you just can't we just meet online? Can't you just hold that? Can't you let your staff work from home? Like, and that was just never going to happen until now. They're like, oh, I guess I need to try that. And so now, of course.
Yeah. Having a virtual conference, I said no every time. We talked about it before. People said, well, is there any way we could watch it like in a private Facebook group or a live or something, because they couldn't make it and they wanted to, or they didn't live nearby. And or like the real problem was introverts that were like, I am not stepping into the room until I know it feels okay.
Yeah.
And I was like, absolutely not. They can either leave their house or not come at all. Figure it out.
Yeah.
And when we had to go virtual, I thought, well, we'll only be virtual then. That's all we'll be, is virtual until this is over, and then we'll go back to 100% in person. And now, because I've seen the impact that people have had, that they just needed to come virtually in order to want to experience it in person. I'm like, oh, maybe we'll always have a virtual component then.
I think there might be. And, I don't think it's all bad, right? I mean, look how much time we're saving, not traveling all the time, not having to drive to a meeting and takes you an extra hour, both ways. And so I think there's a lot of efficiencies. I mean, granted, we're zoomed out a little bit and it's nice to be in person with people, but I think a hybrid is probably in our future.
Yeah, I think I agree. If I meet with people for coffee or lunch or something, I stack those appointments. So I'm not just driving in for coffee or lunch and driving back, which I don't live in Cedar Rapids. I'm outside of town, a small town. So, it's a half an hour to get in and parked and a half an hour back and home, and then the time in between and the lingering and all the things. Yeah.
And I couldn't find a parking spot, so I'm late, and yeah,
all of that has gotten I agree that even those hybrids, hey, maybe we meet virtually 3 weeks out of the month and then we meet in person the 4th, and all of that works out and is so much better. I am glad that this has opened that stuff up for us anyway.
Yeah. Well, and I think the reach, right? The exposure. I teach a class at the Wartburg College, and it's online, and it's focused on public health. Actually, that's my background. And so I've had a doctor from Texas and a nutrition coach from Utah. And so people from all over guest speaking in my class. Wow. Because it's virtual, right? And so we can do that. Otherwise, we're pulling from not just locals, because I also have local people joining too, but it just provides so much more opportunity for connection.
Yeah, I think it's really cool. Well, I am so excited about your session. I'm so glad we got to meet.
Me too.
Get to talk. I think our audience is going to be thrilled to kind of hear what you had, and I have to share at the conference. I know when the idea was first presented to me about finding my why, I thought it was such, I don't want to say crap, but I was like, I don't know. I want to make money. I had worked in the corporate world my entire life. We go to work and make money. I don't need a why bigger than that. And I think I always did, but I think the value of my business has gotten bigger the stronger my why has been. But that first discovery was very hard. Especially not being a mom, because I think moms are always like, well, I want to provide a better life for my kids. And I'm like, well, I mean, yeah, I guess that's fine, but
I'm with you. I'm like, yeah, my kids, they're going to be fine. They'll fend for themselves. But the reality is, I just believe every person in this world was born for a purpose. And if they don't fulfill it, the person who needs it the most won't receive the gift that you have to give. So we really, Les Brown always says the graveyard is the richest place, because that's where all the hopes and dreams and solutions lie, because people didn't take steps to get them out and share them. And so that's on the hardest days when I'm like, I don't want to anymore. I'm like, but we are going to, because we need to get those purposes fulfilled.
Wow, I think that is the perfect way to close off this this podcast. That is so very powerful. Thank you. Thank you so much for being here. Is there, so I will be in the notes of this podcast, and where we have it all posted all over. We'll have links to your website and where they can find you on LinkedIn and Facebook and stuff. So make sure you check that out and go do some talking of this woman.
Yes, that would be amazing. I would love that. I love connecting. So that's my other strong gift. So thank you for the opportunity so much, Kendra. I really appreciate it. And I look forward to the conference.
Yes, I'm excited too.
Yeah.